Hey guys, welcome back to Honey in the Rock, episode 40. Today I have Miss Michelle with me.
Hello, hello.
She is a mom and a business woman and a wife and a friend and all the things.
All the things.
She has the cutest two little boys. They're precious.
They love Miss Sophie.
I mean,
Love
I
Miss
love
Sophie.
them. So when I saw you guys at Chick-fil-A the other day, I was so excited because I was like, oh my goodness, they're so cute.
They talked about it all the way home too.
Sweet.
Yeah, they said we're going to Miss Sophie's house now. I was like, not right now.
But they're so cute. And then, marketer, is that the right word?
No. Yeah. So
business owner.
Yeah. So I own a executive interim PR and ad agency. So we do interim consulting, filling positions in an interim capacity, and then just a traditional marketing advertising agency side. But definitely a marketer for sure.
All things, and then she's also such a good singer. When you sing, it's like the first time we ever heard you sing, you had the ukulele with you, and I was like, okay, this woman is amazing.
I was so nervous. To play a ukulele and sing. I mean, my hands were like numb. They were so nervous, and I was just like pounding on that thing. Yeah, I remember that.
But that was so fun. And my dad was like, she sounds like the cutest little Disney singer. Like you were just like precious up there. Go.
I love your dad. I'll have to remember that.
It was so funny. And then my mom, every time, she's like, we need Michelle singing. Just tell her. But
yeah, the only thing I've seen at the past couple years have been funerals. So
I mean, that's positive.
Maybe need to get back in the choir so it's not just funerals.
But how I start with every guest is asking them what's their story / testimony. So
man, that's a big question. So I thought about this for a little bit of how to package this. Right. So testimony and kind of story along with that. I was introduced, I would say, to the concept of Christianity very young in the Bible, but not necessarily to Christianity in its authenticity, the way I know it today. Yes. And so I definitely had a seed of faith when I was younger, and I came to Christ at a young age, and it was genuine, but I didn't have a very peaceful childhood, didn't have a really good home life, and the church I went to was very strict and harsh, and it was also extremely limiting to women, and women were just very subservient and just really not active members of the faith, where it was concerned other than just leading the very young children. And so I would say as I grew and as my home life kind of deteriorated, got worse and worse, my parents didn't have a very healthy marriage. And as that deteriorated, and so did our financial situation, life got harder and harder. And I would say that seed of faith that I had never really grew beyond that initial belief and trust in Christ. But the church I was raised in, the scripture that was presented, it wasn't presented in a way that I felt nurtured me or I grew. And so as I grew into adolescence, I definitely grew away from God. And I think, I'm an only child, and after just coming from such a broken home, and then my parents did get divorced, and that's too when the economy crashed in 2008, and we really lost everything. And I really felt very alone and isolated. And so just really, I liken it to I was on an island by myself, just kind of drifting further and further away from God and really from everyone. And so, at the time, I thought this was very ironic. But now thinking back, all of this is God's providence. But we didn't really have any money. I knew to go to college, it was going to be scholarships, or I was going to join the army, something like that. So got scholarships and applied. And the school that I got the most scholarships and got a full ride at was a Christian university. And at the time, I was not thrilled with that because I had such a disenfranchising experience with Christianity, the church, and believers. I was not super thrilled about that. So I went off to college, and I was living on campus in the dorms, and the hall and the room I was in, it was filled with girls who had had a very different experience than me growing up, who had mentors in the faith, who were really actively seeking God, and were also just living it out in a way that I had never seen. And I would definitely say I had a faith crisis, before then and leading to that point. And God just really used that time the seed was there, but that was the first time it was watered, and it really took root in my heart in a different way. Yeah.
Wow. And then, so in college is kind of when you realized, oh wait, this is what I have. And then through that, did you join a church, or did you like connect with other girls there? Like, how did you, when you realized, oh wait, I didn't have this faith, okay, now it's starting to become watered. How did you plug in to continue that?
So my university was, really great about having very intentional touch points with the gospel.
Yeah.
So on my hall there was a Bible study, and I was very cautious. Right. I mean, I had honestly never even really heard of a Bible study. It was, you went to church Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night, camp meeting, revivals, that kind of thing. Yeah. But I had never heard of just meeting at someone's house to eat and do a Bible study and talk about your lives, and two, I never seen a format where people were sharing the challenges that they were going through, and not about other people's challenges and requesting prayer for those, but actually speaking to their insecurities and what they had been through. I'd never seen that format.
That's so cool.
Yeah, it really was, and it was very eye-opening, and it definitely kind of knocked off the hard edges that I had around my heart at the time. Because before I felt just very alone, and that the only way I was going to get anywhere in life was to just do it for myself,
Right.
And then that was the point where I really started to feel like I was not in it alone, that I was in part of a group that was working towards something together, and that also just cared about me for me.
Yeah.
And
that's so cool.
It really was. And then I joined a church there in town, and then Shane and I, so we had dated, my husband, we had dated in high school, and then we broke up, and we were in very different places faith-wise, because I was getting to a point very much faith crisis, and he was not. And I just was going through a lot personally, and then we ended up getting back together, and then that's where we tried out Mountain Creek.
Sweet.
Yeah, and we joined Mountain Creek when we were dating long distance. And so just, God orchestrated putting me in the right place at the right time. And even if we're following that seed analogy, I mean, he really took me out of these harsh conditions and put me in this garden with very thoughtful and dutiful, gardeners tending to me. And so I had this amazing group of girls. And then even I worked at a jewelry store, and the manager was a wonderful woman of faith, and she really poured a lot into me. And so just these different people at these different points, and Shane's parents have been, incredibly influential in my life. Yeah. And so, just really have just grown, I think, since that point. Yeah.
And what I love about asking that question is because I see you now, and a lot of other people, I'm like, I know you now. I know you from church, or I know you from this. And it's just so cool to see, oh, but this is how God got you here. Because we're not, no one was just born and oh, okay, here I am, with that relationship with Jesus. So that's really cool. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
So now as a mom, how do you kind of not change that, but for your boys, how do you implement Jesus in your home so they know that this can be, a well-nurturing faith, and just lead by example? But what are some things that you can do, or how do you impact that in your life?
I mean, that's such a good question, and something that I'm thinking through and asking myself all the time. And I think one thing that is so cool, and I'll try not to get emotional saying this, is, when I was younger, my greatest prayer was to have a peaceful, loving home, to feel loved and supported and cared for. And didn't realize when I was praying for that was not the place that God was going to answer that prayer, but he has answered it now, and that's what I have with my family now.
Sweet.
It is. And so, really thinking of how to be good stewards of these blessings that we've been given.
Yeah.
And then giving them that like loving, peaceful, Christ-centered home.
Yeah.
And we were at like a family discipleship night.
Yeah.
And this was just a little bit before Matt joined, I think. Or maybe Matt was there and Rhett was still here. Yeah,
Yes,
I think the three of them were here. And so we were at that night, and I can't remember who said it, but someone said, or maybe it was in the book, that your everyday life will determine how real your children feel that the faith is.
Oh, wow.
Because if you're not living it outside of church, is it real?
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks. You know, it was very convicting of, you know, how when they look back, like our everyday habits are going to are going to inform to them how real the faith was to their parents. And so, you know, just my goal, and I think, you know, Shane and I have had a lot of conversations about this, is to really paint a vibrant picture of life fulfilled, you know, through Christianity and through our beliefs. And so like the little, like, I guess, daily practice in practical ways is, you know, I do love being involved in the children's ministry. So I love to be down there like on my ministry month and in there with, you know, the boys and teaching. And then I like to be in there Wednesday nights with them. And just being a part of their faith time, I think that's really so important.
Yeah. And I've seen a lot of the other side of that, but I love seeing that side of it.
Yeah.
Because I enjoy to help with the kids, but then it's like, oh, well, when I have kids, I'll have to stop doing that because it's not in kids. But then it's like, actually, it's really cool to be in there, see them interacting with the other kids and learning, you know, through me from in that situation. That's really cool. And also just like being in your home, sometimes you can see how loved your boys are, and
I appreciate
like
that.
Even how you welcome me into your door. It's like, I'm like, and I'm not your kid. And I just can't imagine how much more they feel loved than.
You make me cry. Wow.
But just how I feel. That's what I told my mom once. Every time I go to Michelle's house, I walk in the door and I feel so loved by her. That just imagine.
I do love you, Sophie. That's why, because I do love you.
But then just how much your boys know that you and Shane love them through that, and then also how much our Heavenly Father loves them. Like if I can feel so much love from you, then and you're not my mom, how much can my head, you know? So that's just such a cool thing. But just being in your home and hearing the boys pray over dinner when they're eating their mac and cheese, like, and how they're so willing to pray, it's just precious. And then just how loved they are. So you can see it too. Like you can see what you and Shane are doing.
I appreciate that. You know, sometimes you need to hear it from someone else to know that it's adding up, you know, because I think in those moments, sometimes you're even thinking like, oh, are we doing enough? And, you know, we try to, in our daily habits, incorporate, you know, like we sing songs that are meaningful. And, you know, Blaine like loves Jesus Loves Me. That's his favorite song in the world, you know. And then, you know, incorporate prayer and really tying in the books that we're reading to what we're doing in children's ministry. And that's why I like to be down there too, because I like to know what we're learning, and I can tie it in. And then even little things of, you know, just making sure it's a beautiful day, and instead of just saying, wow, it's great weather, we say like, oh, we're so thankful for this beautiful weather that God has given us, and talk about how he made the world. But it's so precious, their prayers, you know. So I do still want to know what Hope Jesus Works tonight. That's what has been in Blaine's prayer for a while. Hope Jesus works tonight. So
I hope he does too.
Yeah, I hope he does too.
And I think that's a good reminder for everyone. Even like obviously if you're a mom to your kids, to be like, oh, this is the weather that God's done. But even like as teenagers in these hard days, it's like actually it's such a blessing to go to school. Yeah. It's such a blessing that the weather's so good out. And you know, just like in our everyday lives. And also we should be doing that to the kids, but even remind ourselves that as well. So that's really sweet. Thank you for sharing that. And then we talked about your work a little bit, but how can you glorify God through work, even though it's not like technically like a Christian environment, but how can you incorporate that and make your, you know, faith known in all aspects of your life? But,
yeah, I mean, I think that's one of the trickiest questions, right? Yeah. And I think it goes back kind of what you said of you walk in my house and you feel loved. I think extending, at least for me, my thought process and approach has always been I lead with extending that, and extending, you know, showing up every
Mhm.
day, even if things are harder, even if
Yeah.
someone's unkind to me,
Yeah.
or they drop the ball on something,
Right.
in making sure that I'm giving grace, that I am, being kind and loving.
Yeah.
And then in those moments where there is an opportunity for that conversation,
Right.
or to pray for them, or to I had an employee on one of my staff teams. Her grandmother had passed.
Yeah.
And so, was able to send like a gift card, and
Right.
then opened up an opportunity to talk more and pray
Yeah.
for her. And so I really think for me, approach has been establishing relationship before anything.
Yeah.
And then leading with, kindness and grace and compassion,
That's
and then
so good.
speaking the gospel to them when it's appropriate, and
Right.
and when God opens those doors.
Yes. And like with that, if you're not building those relationships first, and if you're not living first, then why would they want to hear something from you? It's not going to be every day we get to walk up to something and be like, guess what? Can I tell you about Jesus? Like that doesn't just happen every day. But you can love first every day, and you can, do extend grace. And I think that's really good, especially like in a work environment or at school, or like learning even with teachers, like realizing, wait, they're human too. I have to give grace to them.
Yeah.
And in work, you have to give grace and love first, and that's just teachers and your work employees and people you're under is going to realize that. So,
yeah, and I think it's always helpful to remember too. The church I grew up in was very salvation and evangelism was very transactional. It was all about converting them right there. And I think it's so important really to remember the opposite. Like, yes, we need to have those conversations, but the harvest is not ours to reap. It is our duty to sow seeds.
Right.
And so there may be 20, it might be 20 seeds down the row that someone has that conversation. You know what? And it might not be anybody having that conversation. And I might be alone, they might be out on vacation sitting by the ocean and having that moment.
Like, oh wait, this is what these people
are saying. But ultimately the harvest is God's to reap. It's not ours. It's just our duty to sow the seeds. So I think when you take, not that you aren't going to have those conversations when the opportunity presents and the Spirit leads, absolutely yes. But I think our primary duty is to the seeds, not the harvest.
Goodness, that's good. That's so
I'm really into seeds today, apparently.
Okay, but it's perfect. And apparently now I have like 20 flowers on my desk. They've grown.
Yes.
But it's just that I really do like the analogy because that's easy to follow.
Yeah.
I can see there. Okay, so my next question is, so were both of your boys in the NICU?
Both were in the NICU,
yeah. In that journey after, this gift, is born, but then it's so hard and probably so scary, as I can imagine. How did you just trust God in that as the boys are in the NICU, and just trusting Him that His plan is better and that He's just going to provide and take care?
Yeah, I mean, that's a hard one, and honestly, not even one that ends at the NICU. There's, every day, I think every day I have to kind of commit my children to God when I wake up. Of, He loves them more than I do. And I actually had a friend who had children before I did, and she said that, God loves them more than I do. And actually, like, at first wrestled at that, like, who loves your kids more than you do? But I thought they are His. They are not truly mine. They are His. And we are all His children, and then that has been a huge kind of motto in my life of just really daily recommitting them back. But at the time it was extremely hard, and it's, it was very unnatural to have a baby and then not be with your baby all the time. And, just them, their health being uncertain, it was really difficult. But I mean, really, like, that's what sustained me during that time, was just calling out to God. And, those are the moments that have really strengthened my faith.
That's good. And the advice that a friend gave you kind of goes with them in the NICU. It's like, well, actually they're His. And then Jesus was like, I'm going to take this out of your control. Like, this is not what you thought. You thought you were going to go home with the precious baby. And now they're going to have to be here for a few days. And so it's just kind of interesting to see how that advice lined up with God was like, they're mine, and I'm going to take care of them here. And then you're going to get to take care of them at home. So it's just kind of cool to see that advice kind of lines up.
Yeah. And I think, I thought at the time that that kind of slogan that was going to be a theme. I thought that would kind of end at the NICU of like, oh, once they're home, then I'll feel fine.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it's every day we get in the car. You never know what can happen. And, you'll see these stories in the news and it's very easy to kind of get swept up in worry, anxiety. I mean, I know several people who have lost children.
Yeah.
And when I heard their story, they're usually it would follow like a couple hours of me just panicked, and then just really having to, align my heart with my spirit and my emotions and, just really recommitting them.
Right. Yeah. It's like every day. Every day we have to pick up the cross and serve God, and every day you have to give your kids to Him in everything we do. So that's really cool. Okay. And then my final question is, back in February of 2022, right?
Mm-hmm.
So a little over a year ago, you had a huge health thing.
Yeah.
So will you share a little bit of that? And then just to follow up that, how did that change your perspective on life in the sense of just wanting to grow that relationship with Jesus and just realizing like we're not promised tomorrow? So first, if you can share whatever you would like and comfortable to in that, and then just how God has worked through it.
Sure. So February of 2022, so last year, I went to the chiropractor, and I had been going to the chiropractor for a little while.
Yeah.
General neck and back pain, sitting at a desk.
Yeah.
And they did my neck adjustment pretty wrong. Yeah. And they tore my right vertebral artery. Mm-hmm. So basically, your artery comprised of quite a few layers on the walls. Yep. And when they tore, it didn't tear all the way through, but imagine like tearing half. Yeah. So then blood was flowing between the layers, and which caused a clot. Yes. And so I immediately had the onset of a stroke. So, dizziness, facial paralysis, couldn't speak, couldn't walk. And took quite a bit to get me to the hospital for some different reasons. Yep. And, I was completely lucid inside my mind the whole time. I understood everything that was going on. I heard everything that was being said and just kind of trapped in my body. Yes. And I really 100%, I never thought I would live, survive that, because I knew I was having a stroke. Right. But it wasn't being treated quickly, and I knew the golden hour, and, I had known these things, and it was hard to tell exact time, but I had enough, I was sitting across from a clock, and I knew that it wasn't looking good. Right. And so we get into the hospital, and I hear them call stroke alert, and I'm like, I knew. Right. And really at that point, I wasn't even praying for God to save, because it never crossed my mind I would live. Right. Oh, so I wasn't praying for God to save me. I was really praying for God to take care of Blaine and Teddy and Shane, and to heal their hearts and, and blessings on their life. And as they took me back and, came out of the CT, and they said, you're having a stroke, we need to administer clot busting medicine. And I think back on this now, because I was alone, and Shane was still on his way. Right. And, she was like, I have to ask your consent, even though I couldn't speak. And then she was like, okay, yeah, you consented. And then she gave me the medicine. And then I, had regained some speech and some movement. And the clot had resolved. So there was actually only about a 15% chance that the clot buster was going to work at that point. And the doctor came in and told us that. Yeah. And we went to the MRI about an hour later, and the clot was completely dissolved. Oh my goodness. Yeah. I mean, that's crazy. It's a miracle. Yeah. So I go up to the neuro ICU, and I had, 6, 7 nurses in my room. Right. And I said, oh, do you guys not really have anybody on the floor? And they said, you're the only one who can speak. Because I was the only one who wasn't intubated. Right. And they were like, it's a miracle. You shouldn't be here, and you shouldn't be able to speak and to have your facilities and be talking and making jokes. And, and so, I went home on bed rest because there was still that tear. Yeah. And so any sharp motion, even, a dog barking in you could have torn it and just, stroke again. Yep. So came home on bed rest, and things were still up in the air. So I mean, I think I even still have a note on my phone that I wrote to
Yes.
Shane and the boys
Goodness,
and
yeah.
shared it with my best friend,
Yeah.
and just in case anything
Right,
happens,
please, yeah.
give this to them. And if anything, the biggest thing that I took from that is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience.
Wow.
Yeah. And every experience God gives us is a gift.
Right.
Every experience.
Yeah.
Like, what a blessing to have this human experience,
So
that God has allowed us this time and space in this place.
Right.
I mean, he didn't.
That's so good. Right.
And so I feel very fortunate and very blessed to have this time, to have a miracle, to, have the healing that God has given. And I definitely had a lot of like mental health struggles last year, and God has really taken me a long way from that. And so I think that's just one of the greatest things when I'm feeling like broken down or, defeated about something or even just anxiety of just that reminder that, if I think we think of our life if we think of it as a story, a lot of times we think of, our life here as the story, and then like the last chapter is our life beyond with God, and it's the opposite. Our life here is like a brief forward from the author. It's not even the story.
That's so good.
And so just a reminder that I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and this is all beautiful. Like sadness is beautiful.
Right. Yeah. And oh wow, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I just remember. I remember getting my mom finding out. And that's just immediate prayer.
Yeah.
Of just like, it was just so, not random, but out of the blue, kind of just like, whoa.
It was bizarre. Goodness. It was bizarre. Yeah.
And then just like, a stroke? What? She's so young. She like, and then just realizing like, whoa. And then just seeing you heal and then see you come back to church.
Yeah.
And then it was just such a blessing to almost watch from afar. But then just like the power of prayer in that, just like praying so hard. But of course, so glad that God took care of you so well here on earth, and how you heard everything else, like you knew everything was going on. That's crazy.
It really is. It was an otherworldly experience, and really the feeling, I can't describe it, but it was almost like a feeling of having part of my soul inside of my body and part of my soul kind of reaching out.
Whoa. Yeah.
And there was a point in time which I came very close to death when I was delivering Blaine. And I had preeclampsia, and they had to give me a second epidural, and my blood pressure crashed. They had to give me epinephrine, and I suddenly all my cares lifted away, and that same feeling of like part of my soul inside of my body, part of my soul reaching out. And it was that same, like right before they gave me the clot buster of just, and it's bizarre. I can't, it's otherworldly, but it's so peaceful.
And almost realizing in situations like that, you realize how out of control you are.
Yeah.
But then that's kind of comforting.
Yeah.
Like it's kind of like, oh wait, I'm not in control. Thank goodness God made doctors. Thank goodness, but then thank goodness God created us this way, that he's the one in control. So it's kind of like a blessing. Like it seems so terrible and I want to be in control of everything. But then like actually like the creator of the universe can be in control. That's awesome. So thank you for sharing all of that.
Yeah, I'm happy to.
Yes. And thank you for coming on today.
I'm so honored that you asked me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thank you guys for watching. Bye.